And speaking of Sam Darnold, we actually will go to the division that he is now in, and that is we'll talk about the NFC West, I guess. Um, and with this division, I think it's definitely changed a little bit because in years past, the prior couple of years, I think we all would probably say, we're like, oh, yeah, the 49ers, this is their division. But I think that's kind of changed. I think that has changed. The 49ers did not have a very good year. They finished 6-11, last place. I mean, who would have saw that coming? But ton of injuries. Guys also didn't play up to expectations at times. And yeah, it just kind of led to that season. Now, I think that they went defensive heavy in the draft, which I think that was kind of the right approach in my opinion. But you do have an older roster now. That window definitely is closer to being closed than it is to being open. And for some people, they might say that the window is completely shut. But you still have some very good players on this team. They went out and they did trade. Well, they traded Deebo Samuel, but what I was going to say is they went and they signed their quarterback, Brock Purdy. I think they signed it more so to a team-friendly deal rather than, I mean, I don't, I don't know. It's not the way
It's
they were
tough with
making.
the quarterback money
Well,
nowadays,
the
but
way, well, yeah, but the way they were, it was like he was going to be paid like north of $60 million. Now it's still like kind of close to that, but like compared to what they were saying he might get paid, listen. I think some of the highest paid quarterbacks that we have now. I mean, I think some of them shouldn't be paid. I had a video of that already, and he kind of called me out for someone I referenced in that. But he's on the AFC episode of this, so we'll get into that at a later time. But yeah, so Brock Purdy, not being paid the highest amount AAV wise of the quarterbacks in the league, I guess was fine for them. But yeah, you still got some good players on this team. We got to see what happens with Brandon Ayuk. How is he going to come back from the ACL injury? Christian McCaffrey, what is he going to look like? George Kittle's getting older. You got Fred Warner, who's playing injured last year, basically the whole year. Nick Bosa was banged up. They still have very good players on this team, and I know some people like to criticize Kyle Shanahan, which I think we all do because he's had some bad moments, particularly in the big game, but he's still one of the better coaches in the league. I think this team definitely can be better than 6-11, particularly because while they finished in last place, they kind of have the last place schedule, so they should definitely do better. But I don't think they're the favorites going into this year with this division, and I think you would agree with that. This division is definitely better. I think, when you look at the Cardinals, I think the Cardinals got a little bit better. I would still say the 49ers are better. I think the Cardinals are another team that they went heavy on the defensive side. They brought over Josh Sweat from the Eagles to improve that pass rush. I'm curious to see what Marvin Harrison Jr. does in year two because I think his rookie season was a little underwhelming. I think you could see a better version of him this year. Also, another player that I know you like, and I like him too, Trey McBride, one of the more underrated players in the NFL. Honestly, I mean we talk about the tight end position. I mean he's right up there with one of the best tight ends in the league, honestly, and he doesn't really get talked about. Um,
because he just can't find the end zone.
well,
But
yeah,
I
I
love
know
it.
he scored.
Like,
He scored his first touchdown, like what, the 15th game of the year.
yeah,
I
and he
could,
only had like three on the season, but
yeah. Yeah, so he's pretty good, and I thought Kyler was like okay last year, but honestly, I don't think like you're gonna win anything with him. Like I think we're at this point. We've seen the sample size; it's a large sample size. That at this point, and we've seen it plenty of times with the Cardinals. We talked like people would say it's a Cliff Kingsbury thing where his teams would start off good and they would fall flat, but I don't know. I think it's just also a Kyler Murray thing because the Cardinals at one point were in first place last year and
I guess that's the
they didn't
biggest
make the
thing too.
playoffs at
Like
all.
with Kyler and the Cardinals, like I was gonna say it, like they're in like the same type of mediocrity. Now they don't make the playoffs every time, but they're in like the same type of mediocrity. Like you don't want to be as a franchise. Very similar to like the Steelers. It's like you have this quarterback in Kyler Murray that's ultra talented, but with his size, it's like, are you ever gonna see the promised land with Kyler Murray? Where is he actually ever gonna lead you? And he's like, and it's a tough spot to be in because we all know from our franchises, super hard to find the quarterback. This quarterback is better than most, but at the same time, where is this ever going to lead you? You're going to be in the midst between like 7 and 10 wins and a non-Super
and I
Bowl
think they
contender.
finished 8-9 last year. You know, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they're at. Like they're kind of like the opposite of the Steelers. Like they're instead of being on that side of mediocrity where you're constantly making the playoffs, you're missing the playoffs. And the one time they did make the playoffs with him, he was terrible. He was terrible. He was terrible. Yeah, and he tries to forget about that. But yeah, so I do think they've improved. But like again, where are they going to go? Probably, you know, they hover around 500 and miss the playoffs. That's kind of how I see it. And then I think one of the more interesting teams this year is the Seahawks. And I feel like for them, I feel like and I think we agreed on this, they kind of like moved sideways. Like, I still think they're going to be a good team, but like, I don't think they got substantially better. Like, you traded away Geno Smith. You signed Sam Darnold. Now Sam Darnold, I think, is better than Geno Smith, but the Seahawks also won. What, they win 10 games last season? Like, how much are you going to win with Sam Darnold this year? Are you going to win more than that? I know he won 14 games with the Vikings, but that's also because the Vikings have a better roster. And then on top of that, you traded DK Metcalf and you signed an older player in Cooper Kupp. Now, I don't think Cooper Kupp is completely washed where he's going to bring nothing to the table, but I mean, he's not the Triple Crown winner that we saw winning the Super Bowl with the Rams, you know? And DK Metcalf is not 30 yet. So, and I like their running game. I like their running game with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. You know, the offensive line was not good. That was the weakness of the team last year, was their offensive line. But the defense is pretty good. And, you know, granted, first year without Pete Carroll, rookie head coach Mike McDonald did a good job. And they were right there. You know, they were right there. They just missed out on the playoffs. They barely missed the playoffs. So I think this is a team that they'll be very competitive. I think they'll be in the mix. They'll be in that, like, you know, 8 to 9 win range, maybe 10. But yeah, I just feel like they kind of moved sideways. I want to see what Darnold does now. You know, now this is now your team. You know, I would have liked kind of. I would have liked to have seen him maybe stay in Minnesota. What? Say that again?
I said he's still on like a prove it kind of deal. Still.
Yeah, because I think it's where it's set up where like they could get out of it after.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm curious to see what he does this year in this, on this new team, and hopefully, you know, the offensive line is better because we talked about the weakness. I talked about the weakness. If it's like how it was those last couple of games against the Lions and the Rams in the playoffs when he was with the Vikings, and I mean the Seahawks offensive line was bad the whole year. If it's like that, might be a long year for Darnold out in Seattle.
All right. Let's keep on going.
Now, again, Domi's a big Darnold guy, and actually, both times I've seen Darnold play live, he's played very well. His rookie year against the Packers played really well, and then against the Giants, Week 1 last year, played really well. At the expense of you know, the Giants, he played well. But yeah, let's go to the team that I think is the best team in this division, and I think they're going to go very far this year, and that's the LA Rams. I really love this team. I think. You know, you got one of the best coaches. They were able to figure things out with Matthew Stafford. You got Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and then you went out and I think you upgraded. You got an upgrade over Cooper Kupp, and you get Davante Adams. I think Davante Adams, many people probably say like, oh, you know, with the Jets last year and the Raiders, you know, he doesn't look the same. Well, I don't agree with that. I think Davante Adams is going to show you that he's still that dude, and he doesn't have to be the number one guy because you have Puka Nacua there. You know, he's the number one receiver in the offense. And now you got Davante as the 2. I think Davante's got more left in his game than Cooper Kupp does. So I really loved that move. The offensive line was banged up a lot last year, and you also had both top receivers going down. Puka and Cooper Kupp both went down very early on in the year, and somehow the Rams were able to turn it around and make the playoffs. And they were very close to knocking off the Eagles. I think if it doesn't start snowing, I think the Rams win that game. And despite it snowing, they still came very close. It's just, you know, Stafford gets sacked on 3rd and 2, and then you got a 4th and long in Eagles territory. You don't convert, and you end up losing a close game there. But the other thing too is this defense. Once we got towards the middle of the year, it really started to show off. They got a lot of good young players on this defensive line. Jared Verse now going into his 2nd year. I think this team is the favorites in the division, and if you could get Stafford to play like how he did, towards the end of the year and into the playoffs, if you could get one more really good year out of Stafford, I think this team could really go far and make some noise in the NFC. And I kind of have them, like I said, going particularly far this season, and could be playing in the big game. We'll see. But right now, if I were to rank these teams in the division, right now I put the Rams at 1. At 2, I'm going to say the 49ers bounce back, and they're going to be a team that competes for a wild card spot. And then you got the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I'd probably put the Seahawks at 3, and then the Cardinals probably at 4. This division, in my opinion, is a little bit easier to rank. But I don't know. For me, I'm giving the 49ers that respect and saying that they will bounce back. But who knows? That's kind of my opinion, though. Love the Rams going into this year. I think we kind of have the same views on the Cardinals. But and we'll see with the Seahawks. So what are your thoughts on this NFC West, Tommy?
All right, so common, like when me and you get together, you say the division's easy to rank. I have a complete different ranking. But to go into everything, the Rams, I think the Rams on paper are one of the most talented teams in the NFL. When you look at them talent-wise, what they have throughout that roster, they're a top 3 to 5 team in the NFL talent-wise. I just want everybody to, pump the brakes a little bit on the Rams because, like you mentioned, a little bit with Stafford, with Davante Adams, there's going to be a time, I don't know if it's this year, next year, the year after, and luckily for Stafford, everybody says your arm is the last thing to go, and he has one of the most talented arms we've ever seen in the NFL. But it's going to be very interesting. This team does have an old aspect to them. I just want to see what you get out of Stafford this year, what you get out of Davante Adams this year. In my opinion, if I would have to bet, I would say they're both still pretty solid. But it's going to be interesting to see because I think either of them, who are huge parts of this team, could take a step back this year in production. Again, like you said with Davante Adams, I don't think he's going to have to be what he was. Obviously, Davante Adams is a guy me and you both love, but Puka Nacua, a guy I also love. I think regardless of Davante Adams' outcome, I think he's still the number 2 in his offense. I think Puka Nacua is a guy right now in the midst of his prime that's bouncing in and out of the top 5 when you talk about receivers in the league. Super underrated, Puka Nacua. And again, this defense for the Rams, like you mentioned, it's solid and just on the rise. It got better last year, and I think it's going to be even better this year. They got a lot of young pieces that are only going to get better. If you would have to rank it, this would be the number 1 team. But again, I think there's more – I don't know how to explain it. I think there's just more to worry about this number 1 team in the division than other number 1 teams in other divisions. I guess I would put it that way. And then going into Seattle's a team I absolutely love. Very different from you. I am 100% all in on Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold showed last year that his talent, finally, he was able to all put it together. I think it depends. It's one of those things like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's how much do you think Sam Darnold is an upgrade over Geno Smith, or if you even think he's an upgrade at all. I mean, we know some people.
Yeah, I definitely think he's an upgrade. I think we've talked about that plenty of times. I definitely think he's an upgrade.
I think he is too. In my opinion, it isn't even close which one I would rather have. Other people would rather have Geno Smith. Again, it's all in how you look at it. I think Sam Darnold, what he could do with his arm, just him talent-wise, I think he's just a step above Geno Smith. And again, like I mentioned while you were talking about it, I think he's going to have something to fight for. In the sense, it's his team coming into the year more than it's really ever been, probably since his rookie year in the Jets. Because when you look at him on the Vikings, up until J.J. McCarthy got hurt, it was a question if he was even going to start the year. Obviously, he had a great year. This year, there's no question he's going to be the one to start for Seattle. So it's his team in that sense. But Seattle obviously showing they still don't have fully trust, belief in him because they could opt out after 1 year. And Jalen Milroe is the guy behind him that's making noise, a guy that I absolutely just don't like at all. But, again, they have an out. For the Seattle team, I really like them. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a guy, when you're talking about underrated players in the league, I think he is at the top. And this is a guy next year that could get in the conversation of Jefferson, Chase, and DD. Like, this is how good I think this guy is. Which, again, it might be a hot take. A lot of people definitely don't.
I mean, I think he's definitely gotten better. Like, the progression, you definitely saw it last year.
I think he's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part about that whole pairing is Cooper Kupp and DK, again, I think it's like a toss-up for 1 year who you would rather have. I think DK is a little overrated as a DK Metcalf jersey in the back.
I was just going to say that.
This is not my room. But I think DK Metcalf is a little overrated. I mean, when you look at his physical gifts, this is a guy that we thought would be in the top 5 conversation for receivers. He's just not. And Cooper Kupp's a guy that you know what you're going to get. And Cooper Kupp, we were talking about Deebo Samuel early in the episode, a guy that's just less likely to fall off because, I mean, this is a guy that's a route technician. And usually when you see people fall off, it's because of their burst, their athletic ability. But for somebody who's so skilled running routes and one of the best football minds in the NFL, I think he's still definitely going to be productive. The question is, like, you would probably rather have DK Metcalf in this offense just because Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith-Njigba, both guys that primarily play out of the slot. So that's going to be tough to see how they work that out. Kenneth Walker-Charbonnet, a running back duo I absolutely love. When you talk about running back duos at the top of the league for sure, it seems like they don't use Charbonnet enough when Kenneth Walker.
I know the only time they really use him is when Kenneth Walker gets hurt, which has happened a few times since he's entered the league. But yeah, they don't mix him in that much when they're both healthy.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you heard, Kenneth Walker is actually like a prime trade target right now.
I might have seen something about that on social media. That is interesting. But
we'll see how that works out. But Seattle is a team, like you said, San Francisco. I think Seattle is the second best team in this division. I think that's where they're going to finish. I like everything. I think Sam Darnold still has to prove some stuff. And I think he's an upgrade over this offense. Even if he's a slight upgrade, I mean, this is a team that won 10 games. They could get them to 11.
Yeah, I mean, they won 10 last year. So, I mean, they could definitely do it again.
That's going to be his second spot. And I think for me personally, why I have Seattle over San Francisco, I just think there's less question marks with Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold isn't a question mark for me. That team already was at 10 wins. Again, Cooper Kupp's kind of aging, but when you look at what's aging for San Francisco compared to Seattle, I don't know. I think there's a lot more question marks for San Francisco. As I'm getting into San Francisco, I really like Brock Purdy. I really do. But now is the point where Brock Purdy, where you came in as this Mr. Irrelevant and you were running this offense better than anybody in San Francisco has in a while, and you were just a distributor to his weapons. Now it's time where you got to be a game changer. Now it's time where the expectations have to rise, and the money justifies that as well. Because when you look at what left this offense, obviously Deebo Samuel left. You're talking about Christian McCaffrey, a guy that's going to be at the back end of his career coming off an injury. Brandon Ayuk coming off an injury. Like, Brock Purdy's going to have to be the guy. And that's going to be a big question mark. And I think what you're going to get out of Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Bosa, Warner, all these guys that are old coming off injuries, that's a lot of question marks for me. That's why I just have Seattle a little bit above them. But obviously they are very close. Do I think Brock Purdy could be a game changer? 100%. I do really like Brock Purdy. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I think it's a good signing. Like we mentioned with Kyler, I don't think he's on that tier. We've seen Brock Purdy play in a Super Bowl and play extremely well, as good as you could possibly play. You could argue he played good enough to win that Super
Oh
Bowl.
yeah, 100%.
Like Brock Purdy's in a different tier. I think Brock Purdy's really good. I would have kept him if I was San Francisco, no doubt. It's going to be close between San Francisco and Seattle. Arizona, I don't even want to talk too much about it. Absolutely love the Maserati. Think he's going to have a breakout season. Trey McBride, they got it, like you said, underrated. The defense is okay. Kyler Murray's just a guy, again, the ceiling and the floor, high ceiling, low floor. I mean, low ceiling, high floor. Like, again, you're going to talk about 7 to 10 wins. This team isn't really going to go anywhere under Kyler Murray.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. It's just it seems like every year for the most part when Kyler plays, like they'll get off to these fast starts. Kyler's an MVP candidate, and then they fall flat. So I kind of expect the same thing when it comes to the Cardinals.